Hello, and welcome to the Big Life NYC podcast. I'm Roderick Angle. I'm super excited about today's episode because we're mixing things up a little bit. This podcast is about having a big life in New York City, one of the toughest cities in the world. And I think that having a great apartment with a great interior design is essential to that goal. And I think a lot of people agree. All clients I have across the spectrum, from an owner of a studio in Williamsburg to a Classic 6 in the Upper East or a townhouse in Long Island City, everybody wants to have a great, well-designed space that really inspires them and supports their life. So today I've organized what I'm calling our Interior Design Roundtable. And I have three really talented and accomplished interior designers here who are currently working in New York City. And we're going to dive into how they think about creating those dream spaces. We're going to talk about their processes for planning renovations, the unexpected things that can pop up along the way, and all the little details that going in to make a really great space. So I'm going to introduce my guests. First, I have Nicki Gitlin. Nicki is a New York City-based architect and interior designer and the principal at Dang. She uses a modern approach to create elegant, functional spaces that enrich the lives of those who live in them. And I love the name Dang. I never said that to you before, but I love it because it's design and architecture by Nicki Gitlin, but it's also, dang, that's a great apartment. And I love that.
Thank you.
And then we have Erik Galiana and Joanna Tesiny. They are the creative minds behind Interiors by Erik Galiana. Since 2014, they have been transforming their client spaces into dream homes. While they do work with clients worldwide, their focus is on helping New Yorkers purchase, renovate, and design beautiful, personalized interiors. Thank you guys all for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You do our initials, it spells I beg.
I understand why you don't use it. Okay, so let's dive right in. I want to set up a scenario to kind of guide this conversation. So let's say you have a client who's looking to buy an apartment, right? Let's call it a 3-bedroom co-op anywhere in the city. Let's say it hasn't been renovated since the 90s. Maybe there was some shoddy work done, but you've been asked to come in to look at the apartment before they purchase. So what should buyers consider when looking at an apartment for purchase in terms of the renovation potential? Erik, you want to go for it?
I think it's really dependent on the client and what their needs are. Like, do they have a family? Do they live alone? Do they entertain a lot? So, like, you can look at a space in terms of, the functionality of living there, but also entertaining there and raising a family there. Can you expand the space? How much money can you actually put into the space and still be within the parameters of resale in the near future, if you have to? Like, our first question that we always ask clients is, like, how long do you intend on being in this apartment? Right. So that's how we determine, okay, so if you're going to be there, if you tell me you're going to die in this apartment, then we could do whatever you want because it's your apartment and you don't care what happens later. Someone else is going to renovate it. Right. But if you're only going to be there for 2 years, maybe 5 years, even if you say 10 years, the circumstances may change and you might have to leave early. So then we try to always steer them into things that are going to be smart for resale, but personalize it to the point where their family is going to love living there.
Yeah, and that whole resale potential is super important to me as a real estate agent because I see it all the time. Good resale potential versus bad design decisions that lead to bad resale potential. So what are some of those things? Like say you have a client that says, yeah, I'm going to spend the next 5 years here. And then I'm going to, I want to move someplace. I want to move to another city, whatever. What would you tell them are the things that need to, for resale potential, what do they need to watch? Is it the bathroom? Is it the kitchen? Is it using neutral colors? Because that I know that's what markets well as neutral colors.
I think it's choosing some neutral colors, being smart about the decisions that are being made. And I think that cost is a big one in that because you don't want to overspend where they're going to lose money in the next 5 years, and you want to choose quality products that are going to last and not in 5 years when you go to sell. Now I have to redo something because that finish didn't last the 5 years that they live there.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. We work with Brown Harris Stevens and many other top real estate firms, staging their homes to sell quickly and at the highest price possible. Our staging is affordable without sacrificing quality or design. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
So let's say you have a client who's going to renovate, but say that they can't do it all right away. Like, what's the low hanging fruit? Like, what should be tackled right away?
I'd say the things that have to stay the same. You know, if you want to phase out the project, let's say, then think about the things that you want to change right away. And then if you want to make more changes, they won't get affected by the new changes. So let's say, for example, you want to change the floors, but you want to move some walls around. Like, I would recommend to do the wall work so that you don't have to do the floors again.
Right.
And to your point, also doing the floors once furniture is in becomes challenging. It increases the cost and the time for that work. So it's always best to do that if you can in an empty residence.
Right. So when you work with clients, are you doing the moving of the walls and the floors and the furnishings? Is that kind of always a package, or is it a little bit of both? Or
I think for us, it pretty much is like we are kind of soup to nuts, so we do everything. I mean, sometimes like if it's the opposite. If like we're doing less, it's usually just the furniture and people moving into a new construction project that they don't want to change. But for the majority of our work is taking older apartments, renovating them to the, so you can really have, like, it's a luxury to be able to have exactly what you want, not what a developer wanted you to have, or what thought you might want to have. It's like you get to do what you want. So that's what we kind of do, is try to not only we look at it as a way to improve their life, not just like where they're living. You know, it's like you wake up in an apartment that you love, you start out your day better, so your whole day, starts out better.
So what do you do? Do you just kind of like tell me what a week is like for you? That sort of conversation. Like, how do you get into that? Like, because obviously you're not there when they wake up at 6:30 in the morning to see,
I feel like I used to have like a questionnaire, like years and years ago. I had like a questionnaire, but
because it seems like you're really getting into people's lives.
Gets natural. I mean, the relationship is like we're talking about your underwear and how you're like storing your underwear in bras, like in drawers, and like how many drawers do you need in your closet. So it is really personal.
Yeah.
It's like we're in every aspect of your life,
right?
For a period of time of you sometimes up to 2 years, so it's like it's very personal.
Yeah.
And with a new client, it's kind of like a courting period, getting to know them, seeing their space that they're in currently, seeing how they live, where things are and how they store items in the closet or cook in the kitchen. I think that if it's a new client, if we're lucky enough to work with a previous client, it's obviously much easier because we've already been through that. So we know how they live and what things that they look for.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're totally developing a relationship with them, and then also getting this like element of trust so that they can give you as much information as possible so that you can plan for them.
Yeah.
So how do you develop that trust? Is it just over time, or
I'd say you continue to have conversations and like they continue to open up. And for me, I'll usually like have a conversation with the client, ask them about their daily routine and get into however much they're comfortable talking about. And then through like plan layouts, as we review those, they'll usually like give more information or say like, actually, this doesn't work for our day-to-day for these reasons, and then the plan develops to get more personalized for them.
Start to understand, because this trust, I mean, it's a huge for real estate agents too. I mean, we know intimate details of our clients' lives and their relationships and their financial, information and all that. So I know that has to just develop over time. You have to earn trust, right? You don't get it right away. So do you find that in a situation like this, do you rely on real estate agents to kind of help you with with that relationship with the client ever?
Usually, like you build a relationship with a real estate agent, and then that's a trust, right? Because then you're referring people to us, and we have to make sure that you look good, right? So that is the trust is already developed there, and hopefully what the agent can do is put you in touch with the you're learning their personality as you're selling them the home, and based on that, then you probably most realtors I feel have a kind of a couple designers that they work with.
Right. They have like a network.
And then they
have a
say,
network.
I think that you would work best with this designer.
And that's who I could. And that's a huge element of trust is like knowing this client, knowing what their taste is, knowing what their budget is, and if they're gonna get introducing to somebody that works for them. Yeah, exactly. If you're able to do that, then all of a sudden you're their go-to person. It's
super personal, and you really have to be able to get along with the client.
Yeah.
During good times and bad times. I refer to it as like a marriage. Like you go through these situations that like stuff comes up. Like in construction, there's always problems and there's always things that come up, and it's how you are able to communicate with the client,
right,
and vice versa, and get through those situations that makes the project really end up as the best that it possibly can.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
So there's problems that are going to arise, right? This is a construction project, right? Yeah. So when you're first talking to a client, like how do you prep them for that? How do you say like,
I kind of have that conversation that I just said. I said,
directly.
Listen, this is like a marriage. Like, you don't hire us if you're not comfortable. Like, you have to decide that you're comfortable with us and we are the right people for you. And then there's an element of trust. At some point, you're going to have to just, throw caution to the wind and say, okay, I decided to trust these people, so I'm going to have to let them do what they do, what their job is.
Do their job, right.
Their expertise. This is not my expertise. I have to let go and trust that these people have listened to me. And that's the thing. It's like listening to the client and really understanding what they want, repeating it back to them so that they're clear that you know what they want, and then delivering that.
Right. Okay, great. So I know we all would love to have clients with unlimited budgets and very hands-off, right? Love it, right? But that's not the reality all the time, and most people do have budgets. So how do you deal with a client who comes to you and with maybe ambitious design goals on a really tight budget? What do you say to them?
That was yesterday.
We
just had that conversation.
How did it go?
It went well. It's somebody that I've known for a long time. She used to be a neighbor of mine, and we met with her yesterday. She bought a house on Long Island, and she was so funny. She was scrolling through her want list. I'm like, okay, you could stop about there because you just told me you have this much money, so don't go any farther.
Right.
And now we have to look at that. And yeah, everybody has a budget. I mean, even people who say they don't have a budget sort of have a budget, but
of course,
when you're on that end of the spectrum, which is rare, it's great. But most people do have a budget, and then we particularly try to be very respectful of that, and say, then it's a determination of pulling that number out of the client because they don't want to tell you. Yeah. They don't really want to tell you what they.
Because everybody wants to get it as cheap as possible.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Or they might even be embarrassed that this is only how much money they have, or whatever it is. But I think people are just trained not to, reveal your true budget.
Yeah.
So we're going to work with the number that you give us. And some people don't want to give you a budget at all. They're just like,
you tell me
what it's going to cost.
Well, often and I'm like, they don't know, so it's hard for them to give a number.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people, like you said, don't know what things cost, especially in New York City when you're managing insurances, and it's a little bit of a different animal. So I think that if you can get that number out of them, that they're comfortable, because when they made the decision to purchase or renovate the home, there was a number in their head that I'm sure that they said, I have this set aside for this project.
Right.
Yeah.
What's that number? And let's work backwards from there and be smart about where to spend the money.
Right.
in the home and what's going to be important for you and your family.
Right.
Sometimes if they really don't want to give the number just because they truly have no idea how much construction or furniture even or any finishes cost, I'll have them put together kind of with me a list of everything they want to do, and then I'll attach a number to it. And then on their end, they'll give it to me as a list of priorities. So we can go through what they definitely want to do along with like the numbers that coincide with that. And then we can kind of land on a scope of work there.
Yeah, yeah. And are there certain aspects that you find people always want to do? Like people, like you should always do the floors, or you should never move walls, or are there any?
Like floors is a big thing, and
Yeah.
like, people like
refinishing wood floors.
yeah, refinishing them
But it's
or
a large
replacing them.
element in the home.
It's like the biggest, pretty much the biggest element in the home. It's
Right.
like, you know,
The floor,
but it's an expensive element. So it's like there's different. You can replace the whole floor, but then you have demo costs as well as material cost, or you could refinish the floor. So it can give you a huge impact. It does generally cost a little bit less, but it's still expensive, you know, depending on the square footage of the home. But it's just a matter of taking that number. If you can get the number from the client, taking that number and then figuring out how to give them the most bang for their buck out of that number.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And one of the way that we tend to do it is like, okay, you have no idea how much anything costs. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a list of the scope of work items that you're requesting, and then we'll give you a high-low budget, you know, based on our experience on like, you know, that's going to cost between here and here. And then we'll add all those up, and you're going to have a total low and a total high. And where are you comfortable? You know, most people are going to be comfortable somewhere in the middle because they don't want to sound like they don't want to, you know, they don't have the money. So they're going to be somewhere in the middle. And then you take that number and figure out, okay, then really the most bang for your buck is going to be doing this. So let's prioritize that and, you know, and help them get through this. Really the same thing Nicki was saying is just finding what the priorities are and how to best allocate the funds.
Right. And sometimes we're able to get contractors in there to give us rough estimates, which is super helpful because at the end of the day, the contractor cost is going to be what it is unless you start reducing from the scope.
Right.
Where you can make adjustments to budget is on the materials. So if you can start with the contracting number once you find a contractor you like.
Then it's down to like, okay, what species of wood are we using for the floor?
Or where are we shopping for tile?
Right.
Not wasting either person's time by showing them things that they aren't going to fall in their budget.
Right.
You know, we need to like that. Like, so by giving the designer the budget, you've given them the information that they need to show you the level of product that you can afford rather than showing you things and letting you fall in love with something that is going to break your budget.
Right,
so
right.
It's really the smartest thing to do is to start out with an honest, you know, budget and say, this is what I really have allocated. And that's how you're going to get the best project.
I fully agree with all that. What I've seen a lot when you get into the actual construction phase and say you've settled on a budget, you've settled on products, you get into construction phase, and now you start to have mission creep. Because now you say, well, if we're going to resurface the floors, you know, we're doing this anyway, so we might as well just move that wall just a little bit or whatever, you know? And then all of a sudden, you're blowing up the budget again, you know?
Yeah.
But then at least it seems like you're blowing up the budget with things that make sense, that the client really wants, and they have the option at that time.
Yeah, and there you just educate them, you know, you give them the change order before moving forward to just make sure that they're comfortable with that as well.
Right.
And we keep an ongoing budget sheet for our clients that we continuously update as changes arise. So throughout the process, they kind of are always aware of what that number is so that they can make those decisions. Yes, I can afford to do this, or it makes sense, or you know what, I really wanted to, but financially, it's not a great idea right now.
Yeah, that's smart. So we're talking a little bit about the construction phase, right? And you know, choosing a contractor in New York City is always this kind of bugaboo of, you know, terror, right? And I see it a lot. So how do you advise your clients about how to interview? Do you choose the contractor? Do you advise them on how to hire a contractor? I think everyone's going to have separate answers on this, so we'll go around the table. Nicki, you're first.
I will always recommend contractors that I like working with, that I know their completed work is of great quality. And most importantly to me is that they're great communicators.
Yeah.
And the clients can also see this in their interview process with how quickly somebody responds, how organized their budget and all their proposals are.
Right. As an indicator of how they're going to do the job.
Yep.
I mean, because I think common knowledge would be like, get 3 estimates, high, medium, low, choose the middle one, or something like that. But that doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's things that you don't think about. It's not even just the numbers. It's also the personality of the contractor and the personality of the client. And then like being in the middle of that, you kind of know who can work with what contractor. So we're going to make recommendations. Oftentimes people have their own clients, which then we, in their own contractors, which we'll vet also and speak to their client and contractor. And it might, and they might already have a relationship with them. And that might be, that might be a benefit to know that they already trust the contractor.
Yeah.
Great. Sometimes in buildings, there's a contractor that does the majority of the work in that particular building. So we might want to interview him, because he might have the connections to get things done on the sly, get things like, work on a Saturday that, other contractors that aren't part of the building crew, don't have the ability to do. So there's a lot of, in the beginning, there's a lot of that kind of thing. Often we're just like, no, this is the contractor you need. If you want this quality work, you need to work with this contractor. But especially on the lower end of the budget, then it's going to be like, trying to really figure out who is the best contractor, who's going to give them the best value for their money, with who they can afford. Basically my point.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a good point. So then what happens when the contractor gets a third of the way through the job and it's terrible, or it's just not working for whatever reason? And I know this happens. I hear about it all the time. What do you do?
Hopefully it's not a contractor that we recommended.
Then
it's like, I hope it was your contractor.
And hopefully it's a job where there's no permits on the project because the
contractor is going to be on the permit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that gets a little bit challenging. We did have this happen to us once, thankfully without permits, and it was a contractor that was recommended from the building that did not do quality work, and we made the decision to terminate with the client, the contractor, and we brought in the people that we had wanted to do the job from the beginning to close it out, because it just made the most sense to get the clients in there in a timely fashion, as well as for the quality that we were all expecting.
Of course, graciously, without saying, I told you so.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, to that point, usually that's the contractor that the client selected and was the lowest bid.
Yeah. Good point. All right. So what are some of the items, the categories of an interior design renovation project that clients don't think about right away or overlook or aren't thinking about but should be thinking about? Really important, overlooked categories.
I would say electrical, very much so. I think the lighting that you choose makes an impact on the space. And often in New York City apartments, there isn't overhead lighting in a lot of rooms, and a lot of the buildings are built out of concrete, so you can't really trench into the ceiling to add lights. So
you can't put recessed where there isn't recessed.
With the existing ceiling, no, you can drop the ceiling a little bit, but that's obviously more
nobody
expensive.
wants to do that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to lose
out the entire ceiling.
Yeah.
I think to build on that too, switching, I think, is where switches are located makes a huge difference that I think that nobody really thinks about. Like having a switch next to the bed so that you're not getting up, before you go to bed and walking around in the dark, et cetera. So I think that. And
that's really hard stuff to think about. And that's really personal, really, that gets into that, like getting into their every waking hour.
Good technology has brought us is the fact that we can now drop the ceiling a very minimal amount that visually the human eye can't tell.
Really?
That we've dropped it
Because the fixtures have gotten so small, so much smaller.
Are now super small. So
because all LEDs.
Drop the ceiling like 2.5 inches, which is negligible, and you can't tell. By the human eye. So now we have the ability to do it. It's a costly thing to do to build down, like to drop a ceiling, but it is super effective and it is now possible. Whereas, before, like you'd have to drop the 6 to 8 inches, which then you're losing half a foot more. So you definitely see that. But nowadays it's really, it's easy to do without really changing your feeling of having high ceilings.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
wants.
It's less about the visual and just more about the cost of framing an entire ceiling.
Right. So what about sound systems? What do you do there if a client says, "Oh, I want 2 speakers in every room," or I want sound in my on my patio?
It depends how important it is to the client, because bringing in an audiovisual specialist is, again, an increased cost. It increases the time because of all the low voltage wiring. So again, it's how important is it? Some clients are very happy with just some Sonos speakers because it's also user friendly. If there's an issue, they don't have to call somebody in. It's something that's easy to do. But I think that having speakers throughout the home and to create a mood and ambiance when you're entertaining is, of course, a luxury that is nice to have, but
but can be
it's very budget driven.
Yes.
Too.
Right, and it can be reasonably accomplished with the Sonos system.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, and we can do that.
Unless you're a total audiophile that needs, and then
Generally,
you
if
get a
it's on the
specialist.
low end like that, like your designer or architect can handle like putting in Sonos speakers for you because they're wireless and basically, we just order them and set them up for you. But if it is a complicated thing, it's really best to leave it to the professionals. And then it's another person that you're bringing in that they might have their own audiovisual guy, which always, I don't know in your experience, but like with us, like whenever they bring in their own audiovisual people, it's always a nightmare because it's like somebody that claims they're an audiovisual person and then all of a sudden they don't know what they're talking about. So that can create a mess. But we have a few resources here that we use in that area that are excellent. Yeah. No, and it's so specialized and it's ever changing. Like the technology changes every 6 months. Yeah. So they have to be up to date on what's new and what's going on. And we can't, like, we have so many aspects that we have to cover about what's new. It's like they focus on specifically that. So it's great to have, we have great people that we work with that we recommend, and it is a really nice luxury when you're working in high end stuff. And now we could do things like have the speakers hidden behind the sheetrock so you don't even see them. Yeah. And it's like everything changes so quickly. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to finish out with just some questions that I have, real world questions, stuff that we were talking about before we started recording. So we were talking about interior paint finishes and like what's currently being done beyond, eggshell with semi-gloss. Like what are some options out there that you're seeing for wall surface finishes that you think are cool? Nicki. Don't speak all at once.
So there's obviously just paint finishes, and you could go with plaster or lime wash that gives you a little bit more depth to the wall finishes. I've also been seeing some finishes that are like a high gloss lacquer that add like that kind of like elevated element.
For like an accent wall sort of thing?
Maybe for like trim or like portal frames from one room to another, or maybe like a bar cabinet.
Yeah.
Or entire rooms. Like, really, you can do like a whole like high gloss, like teal blue, library, and it looks amazing, but it's a certain client that's like ready to do that sort of thing.
Right. And might not work great in the resale.
Exactly.
And that goes back to the first question is how long are you going to be in this space?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that not related to paint, but kind of is we're seeing a lot more clients open to doing wallpaper.
Yeah.
To give texture to
wallpaper's
walls.
great.
Yeah.
I mean, there's such great wallpaper out there these days,
Yeah.
And it seems like a cool way that you can add interest that's
It
not
makes you
so
look like you hired a designer, you know.
Right,
Like, at
right.
the end of the day, you spent all this money and you want it to look like you hired a designer to do
Right,
it.
right.
You didn't do it yourself, so that's like an added level that takes the finishes of the apartment to the next level and really, most people are doing this not only for themselves, but they're doing it to impress their friends.
Yeah.
That's the truth, right? So
Right.
you really want to. I say all the time that like the most important room is your powder room because that's where your friends go to be alone and judge you.
Yeah.
You know? Like, that's where they're really looking around and being like, this is. I guess they did pretty good here.
Yeah.
You know, I'm jealous.
So I think that's the
what we're going
takeaway.
for.
Don't
Yeah.
neglect the half bath.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It'll impress your friends.
Yeah.
Great. So thank you so much, guys. This has been great. I really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
I learned a lot, and I hope you guys did too. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, make sure to check out all my other podcasts, the Big Life NYC, and check out all the other podcasts on the Brown Harris Stevens Moore Network. There's a lot of great ones. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right. All right.